Welcome back to the Camilla Show. Joining me now is the esteemed historian and biographer, Sir Anthony Seldon. Sir Anthony, lovely to see you on this Sunday morning. It's an interesting time. Lovely to see you. It's an interesting time, isn't it? Keir Starmer, I think we can both agree, on the ropes. You'll have seen the coverage in the Sunday papers. Actually quite legitimate sort of briefing and sourced quotes about his days being numbered. It looks terminal. People are talking about him in the vein of John Major, a sitting duck prime minister. What do you think?
So I think it was so avoidable, Camilla. If only he had the good manners, really, the good judgment to realise that being prime minister is not the same as campaigning. You have the heaviest responsibility imaginable to the nation to try and give it growth, to get the economy flowing, to generate the money, to get Britain out of the financial mess it's in. And he didn't listen, or he did listen, but listened to the wrong people who knew nothing, absolutely nothing about how to be prime minister. And, you know, as I and many others were writing, it would spell doom if he continued as he did, and he didn't listen, he carried on. And here we are now. So, Camilla, first point really is it was completely avoidable. And now he's in an absolute hole. I think it's very hard. We must remember this. I mean, we've talked before about Boris Johnson carrying on, Rishi Sunak, John Major mentioned. It is very hard to get rid of a prime minister. Nothing like the American president, where you are locked into a fixed term, but it's still difficult because there are all kinds of institutional lock-ins that make a pivot difficult, particularly for the Labour Party, and particularly if you don't have an oven-ready alternative around which people can unite, who is clearly going to do better against a challenge. And in this case, it's obviously Reform and Nigel Farage. But that's a terrible position to be in if the reason that you're there is there's no one better. I mean, that's awful for any leader in any job.
But maybe that's changed now in recent days. You know, the emergence of Andy Burnham, the Manchester mayor, who is quite personable. He's good at media. He's quite popular. He seems to have done a good job in that northern city. You know, now Angela Rayner is out of the picture because of what happened over the tax avoidance admission. You know, somebody like Burnham could galvanise, particularly those Labour MPs on small majorities who must be going around their constituencies getting such hell because of the Prime Minister's bad performance.
Absolutely. And they are incredibly worried because being an MP or being a minister for the lucky few is the high point of their life. And they don't want it to end in 3 or 4 years' time, or even maybe less. So, so Andy Burnham, very presentable, charismatic, charming. There are question marks, obviously. He wasn't an unqualified success as a minister, and he has critics, and not just on the right, for what he's been doing in Manchester. So, you know, it's not a shoo-in, Camilla.
No.
And you know, once he starts becoming more plausible, more of these reservations about him will come up. So this is the point. This is it. It's not a case of will he survive or not. It's a case of will he survive with the initiative, with power, or will he just be in office but not in power? That's the key question. That is what we're talking about. He can carry on in office, but without the initiative and with people pretty much giving up on him and lots of critical comments from his own MPs and from everybody else. Or can he regain the initiative? Now, if that's the essay question, I think it's going to be really hard for him now ever to regain the initiative. He's had chance after chance. There is still a possibility. It's such a, Camilla, as again we've talked about often before, we've never had a time in politics like this with so many prime ministers and chancellors going, and with such a plausible challenger from the right as Nigel Farage and Reform. polling so strongly. So it's hard to say it won't happen, but I think it's unlikely that he will regain the initiative with the party conference coming up, all the debate over who's the deputy leader, not that that matters, of Labour, and then the budget. What can he do in the budget, given he's done what he's done so far, to restore confidence and to show he's serious about growth? Very tricky. Not impossible yet, but pretty hard.
What are your thoughts about the Peter Mandelson saga? Funny enough, I remember seeing you do a lecture at the West Hampstead Synagogue some time ago. I brought my eldest child. And Peter Mandelson, you'll remember, was in the audience. And then he had a fight with somebody else in the audience about whether Keir Starmer had done enough to expel those aligned with Jeremy Corbyn from the party over anti-Semitism. And that was back, I looked it up, Anthony, it was February 2024. And I sort of thought, why is Peter Mandelson there showing support for Starmer? Lo and behold, his loyalty is rewarded with that ambassadorship. Now it's ended in tears. You're a close follower of politics. I'm a close follower of politics. We could have told Keir Starmer that it wasn't a sensible appointment in the first place, because Mandelson's always had history, and most people in Fleet Street were familiar with the nature of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein.
Well, you were there. I remember you chatting to Peter Mandelson afterwards. And the lecture was about what does it take to be a successful prime minister? I mean, that didn't interest him. I mean, maybe it wasn't an interesting lecture, but it was a little bit odd that he took it off entirely in his own direction and on his own agenda to make his own point for his own reasons. And I think that's a problem with Peter Mandelson, incredibly gifted, but also extraordinarily egocentric. And it's always about Peter Mandelson himself, you know, and there isn't the big vision. What Starmer needed was a vision for Britain after 14 years of Conservative government about how that was going to be driven by an absolutely thumpingly strong economy now out of Europe. What would that look like? We hadn't heard that convincingly from the Tories. He could have done that. It's about vision. It's not about ego. And there's far too much ego in politics and far too few serious people who are putting their national interest, including the working people who've suffered the most from the misjudgments of politicians over the years. And hence the rise of Farage.
Indeed. And very quickly on that, Sir Anthony, because we're running out of time, can you envisage having to write your next biography of Nigel Farage? Will he be Prime Minister? Very briefly.
He might be, Camilla. The polls would suggest he definitely will be. And anybody who underestimates Nigel Farage ought to go off for a drink and with him and find out the magic that he has, that Donald Trump has, which in this new political world is almost essential to obtain power.
OK. Thank you very much indeed, Sir Anthony Seldon. Lovely to speak to you this morning.